Hello guys, good day. How are you? In this tutorial we're going to be adding JWT authentication to our ASP.NET Core Web API. So let me open Visual Studio. Okay, let's create a new project. Create a new project. Okay, select ASP.NET Core Web Application. Click Next. Let me select the folder I want it to be in. I want it to be in dev. I have YouTube that says yeah, cool. So I want it to be here. Okay, let's call it JWT Authentication Web API. Okay, click create. Okay, select API. We would like HTTPS. Okay, click create. Okay, great. So the first thing is you want to create a user model. Let me create a folder for models. Models. Okay, inside here we want to create a class of let's say user model. Yes, then okay, so inside there we want to have a public string username, get set public string email address. Okay, then public string password. Okay, cool. So the next thing I want to do is come to my app settings, my configuration file, and then set up a key for JWT. This will hold all our configurations for JWT. So we have three configurations key. Your JWT key can be anything, like you can say EBSY23, so on like that. It can be a random character. So we have another value issuer. Issuer can be maybe your domain, like propenster.dev, that's my domain or something. Propenster or propenster.github.com. Okay, and then your audience can be the same thing. So excuse me, your audience can be the same thing. So let me copy this right here and paste it here. Okay, I also want to have because in this tutorial we're going to add code user authentication details. So I want to have user authentication details key in our config file, so that will validate against. So we want to have username equals so input propenster, and then pass let me put email address, excuse me, propenster at dev.com, and then I want to have a password. This is the password we're going to validate against. Passport propenster 007. Okay, let's save, and then so we have a user model now. Now we want to create a service to do our JWT authentication. So let me create another folder called services. Let me create another folder called services. Excuse me. Okay, services, and inside here I want an interface because we are going to use dependency injection to to do to handle our authentication. So we get into the controller. So I want to call it IJWT Authentication handler.cs. Okay, so it's a public interface, and then I want two methods inside there. So one will return a type of user model. Two methods, they are authenticate user, which will take a user model, user, okay, info, and then another one will be we return a string type. We call it generate JWT tokens. I will pass in the user model also, user info. Okay, so let's try to bring user model here. It's complaining because it doesn't know what is okay. So use the models. Great. So this is our interface. Then let's create a class JWT Authentication Handler that will implement this interface. So I want a class JWT Authentication Handler.cs. So it's going to implement our IJWT Authentication Handler interface. So implement all interface. Good, you can see it here. So I want to bring I configuration because we are going to be speaking to this app settings.json here. So I want to actually bring it. So I want to bring app settings. So we need I configuration to be able to do that. I configuration config. Okay, and then I will initialize it in the constructor. So let me first using Microsoft extensions.configuration. So okay, I configuration config. Okay, so config equals to config. Good. I also want to bring something that will give us an interface to our user authentication details. So okay, let's just continue with authenticating user. So actually we need a controller. So the controller will have a login method that will authenticate user, and if the user is successfully authenticated, it will generate JWT tokens for that user actually. So I want to implement this authenticate method now. So we have a declare a user model login, which is equals to null for now. Good. And then now validate now. So we would say if if user info that is passed here, right here, passed to this method, if user info dot username, we are using username, is equals to our username that we have defined in our configuration file. So I'm going to bring this key now. So into here, is equals to config. This is how we access it. So you create, then you pass it in here, slash, you see this column, meaning this is the key, and then the value is username. So it's sort of a dictionary. So username, and user info that is passed to our authenticate user method dot password is equals to, let me copy this guy right here. Now we select for password now. Okay, can you see that? So now I'm going to put password here. Can you see password? Copy it, paste it here. Good. So what should happen if authentication is successful? Then our login model, we are going to return this login model for JWT to generate WT tokens to act on it. So our login will now be new user model. Then we have a username is equals to config username is equals to, that is, if authentication is passed, I want details for that user. Actually, in production, you don't want to be hard coding. You are probably wanting to be fetching the username, password, and everything about the user from a particular database. So, email address is equals to, this time I put email address as it is in the app settings JSON. So, okay, paste that, and then I have password. Last but not the least, password. Okay, let me just copy this right here. Paste it. Great. Okay. So if authentication is successful, then it should return login for us. Good. So the authenticate function is done. The next thing we are going to do now is to write the generate web tokens, generate JWT tokens. This is the guy that will take the work from login. After login is done, the authentication is done, then it will come and generate WT tokens, JWT tokens for the user that is successfully authenticated. So this is how we write that. var declare a security key. Security key is equals to new symmetric security, new symmetric security key, and then we pass in I'll be encoding, excuse me, encoding dot utf8 dot get bytes config. Okay, now you want to bring in the key for your JWT. So that will be JWT column key. JWT column key. So JWT, that is, look for this guy and his value here, right? This key. So that's how you generate your security key. Okay, so okay, now for us to be able to use, we have to import some packages. So we have to go to our Nugget package manager and install this Microsoft Identity Model token. So I will right click my project and go to manage Nugget packages and just search identity. Just search identity, and then you have identity model tokens. Good. Let me, okay, let's install this. Okay, so that is installed. Great. So come back to our authentication handler, and then using Microsoft, so just click this now. So encoding is in system.text, so import that namespace. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to define our credentials. Var credentials is equals to new signing credentials, and we want to pass in two things: our security key that we are just defined up here, this guy. Okay, after security key, we also want to define the security algorithm that we want to use. We want to use HMAC. You can use HMAC SHA-256, anyone. So after that, now we want to define claims. We want to define claims. Define claims. Claims is like you want to define what you want to encode in your JWT, because the JWT token is encoding of some particular parameters. So I will do that by saying var claims is equals to new, okay, it's a new array sort of, and then you want to do new claim, and then that will be JWT registered claim names dot, I want to do sub means subject. So you want to pass in your user info, the user you want to pass in the username from your user info. So user info dot username. Okay, then the next thing we want to encode here is new claim JWT registered claim names dot email. We want to encode email also, user info dot email address. Okay, and then new claim JWT registered. Don't worry, still complaining. I'll bring in those nugget packages just in a bit. So new claim names. You also want to pass in a JTI, a JSON token identifier. So that will be a GUID dot new GUID dot to string. Okay. So now we are done with that one. So after we have defined our claims, uh, what we want to do is to write our token. And how do we write token? So first, let me bring in the nugget packages that will satisfy all this. So we want to bring in this system identity model tokens JWT. So come to your nugget packages, system.identity, just come manage nugget packages, and then you want to bring in system.identity. Okay, JWT. Let me select something like, okay, let's see if this will be compatible with I'm not sure what if I'm using. Okay, good. So I think we're looking good. So it will stop crying of all these errors right now. So okay, so let's bring it in. System identity, okay, and claim also. System security claim, good. Okay, you see, um, those strings is a method, so it will stop right now. Good, good. So we also want to define our token. So define token and encode, do the and write. Sorry, we have already encoded. So okay, so var token will be new JWT security token, and that will take some values like some parameters. So the constructor takes issuer. Issuer is you bring it from your config for JWT. So JWT issuer, that is this guy right here, issuer. Okay, so we are bringing it from the config file JWT issuer. We also want to take another parameter, which is audience. So config JWT, excuse me, JWT audience. But let me copy it. Sorry, don't mind me. I'm too lazy. So audience, JWT audience. Okay, and then it also takes claims. So pass in your claims that you have defined above here. This claim array. So pass them in claims, and then it also takes expire. You can tell it to encode the time it's going to expire also and validate against it. So that will be let's say our token will expire in 5 minutes. So that will be date time dot now, okay, dot add minutes. I want to add 5 minutes. No, not milliseconds. Add minutes. So how many minutes, how many seconds make a minute? So make 5 minutes. That's 300 seconds. Add 300. So I want to add so add minutes. So 300. So and then it also takes a signing credential. Also, signing credentials will be your credential right here. So just come and paste in the credential. Okay. So put a column right here, and then so define an encoded token. Fetch so fetch encoded token. So var encoded token equals to new JWT security token handler dot write token, and you pass in your token. And then The result of this generate web token method is to return the encoded token for this current user, this currently authenticated user. So return encoded token, and we are done here. So the next thing you want to do is to come before I deal with the controller. So you come to your startup.cs and then you come and make some declarations. So before controller, so I want to add course services.add course. Okay, and then add course. Excuse me, I'm coming. Options. Sound. Okay. Options dot add policy. My default policy. Default policy, that's the name of your policy. You want to have a builder here. You can pass in a builder. Your builder will builder dot allow any origin dot allow any method dot allow any header dot allow credentials. Excuse me. This is wrong with my keyboard. Allow credentials. So okay, so we have added course. For the controller, you also want to add now you want to add definition for your JWT for your authentication. So services, make services dot add, make sure you add it before the controller. Add authentication, service dot add authentication. So JWT bearer defaults dot, and then you define your authentication scheme. Authentication scheme dot add JWT bearer options, create an options builder. Okay, bearer default, we need to bring in microsoft.aspnetcore.authentication.jwt bearer. So I want to come to my Nugget package manager. So Microsoft authentication JWT. Okay, so this guy right here. So bring it in. Let me see. Can use version 3, I guess. So I accept. Okay, now it's now installed now. So great. So come back to your startup.cs, and then so after you're here, you can just let's bring in JWT bearer. Great. And then your options builder with options dot token validation parameters, which is equals to new token validation parameters, which will be, so you want to define validate issuer, set to true, validate audience, set it to true also. Okay, validate lifetime. Remember we set the expires when we were defining our token true, and also validate issuer signing key. Also validate issuer signing key true, and then we want to define the valid stuffs, valid parameter. So valid, excuse me, valid issuer is the guy from our configuration file from here. This is the valid issuer. So how do we bring it in? So we use configuration JWT issuer configuration. I didn't spell that correctly. Okay, good. So it's not complaining any longer. Okay, valid audience. Valid audience is configuration JWT. Excuse me. Valid audience JWT audience, and then valid so issuer signing key now. Issuer signing key is version WT key. So of course I want to do encoding for that. So that will be a new, or else if you don't understand, symmetric security key. Symmetric security key encoding dot UTF-8 dot get bytes. Okay. New symmetric security key. So let's bring in identity model tokens. Encoding. This is system.text. So put a colon here, put a colon here. So services dot add MVC. Okay, so after you have done this, so you come right down here to your middleware. So and then between routing and authorization, just add app.use authentication. Okay, so now we're done with everything JWT and token and the security etc. So now we want to create our controller now. Let's say, or I should use the weather forecast controller. Yes, let me use the weather forecast controller. So now I'm going to use the weather forecast controller. So inside here, I'm going to first inject our service, our authentication handler service. So I'll create a private read-only JWT authentication handler JWT JWT. Let me just call it simply handler JWT handler. Okay, so using JWT Web API services. Okay, good. So where's our constructor? So our constructor is here. So I will initialize this service in our constructor. So then create JWT handler. Then you come here. JWT handler is equals to JWT handler. Good. Now, okay, for you to be able to use dependency injection here, you also have to come and add in our dependency injection container, you have to come and add your services also. Okay, so you come right here at the top. So let's, after adding course, services dot add scoped. Okay, everywhere it sees JWT authentication handler, you should use JWT authentication handler service as the implementation for that interface. So now bring the services namespace. Good, using. Okay, good. Now we can continue. with our controller. So weather forecast controller, I'm going to use the sample controller that comes with our project. So I want to create a login endpoint here. So it's a post request. So because we're going to be posting the username and password, so let me give it a route of um, let me say login user. Of course, yeah, that's what it does. So public um, action results, login. So it's going to take from body parameter. So not from parameters, from body as a schema. So we pass in a user model, user, or let's say login. Great. So good. So we're going to do some logic here. Actually, I'll first set I action result response to be unauthorized. These are default response. That is if authentication does not go well. So now after that, let me first bring in the user model into our controller. Okay, so I'm going to say user, let's say user var user equals to our JWT handler, that is this implementation right here. So JWT handler dot authenticate user. I will pass in the user model that the individual that is calling this method passes in. So var user is authenticate that user. So if if user is not equals to null, that is if actually authentication is successful, then we want to make our guy to generate web tokens for it, right? So we are going to just do JWT handler does generate web tokens for, I'm going to call it a, let me call it a var token string, okay, because it returns right here, come and see it right here, it returns encoded token. So you want to return token string, generate web tokens for this particular user here. Okay. Okay, so what we do is just return, just set response to be an OK object. And then you pass in your user, this user that we have generated token for, and the token string for that user. So put a colon here, save, and you want to run the app. Let's run and see. Let's try to run the app and see if it works. Okay, good, nice. It's coming up now. So actually, it's not going to open here because we have set that weather forecast to be authorized, authorizable. So what we do is copy this URL and come it postman here and try to fetch a get for all the weather forecasts. So if we send it, it's going to be 4.1 unauthorized. So that means it actually works. So how about we send a post first? Let's send a post request first, and then I think what's our route for login user. Okay, cool. So bring it here. It takes a post request, and what's my username? My username defined in our configuration file is popenstar, and password is popenstar 007. So going to delete. Okay. So and then it's a post request. So just click send. Wow, it works. So can you see? So it generates a token for this user. So if you come and use this token string, to send this request we had earlier sent. So it's now going to work now. So come here to bearer token, just paste it right in here and then click send again. And you see it works. Now you have all the values that's been authorized. You get it 200 okay. So you can also send it in the header. It's the same thing. So authorization, paste in the token that you just obtained here for this user. So paste it in and then click send. It works. So that's it about adding JWT authentication to your ASP.NET Core Web API. So if you like this, I'm going to actually put it on a GitHub repo. Let me see if I can do that. Let me see if I can do that now. Let me see if I can do that. Let me see if I can do that. So let me create a repository for it. So JWT Auth ASP.NET Core Web API. Okay. So Web API, JWT authentication in ASP.NET Core 3.1 Web API. Okay, so I'll create the repository. So let me quickly try to go to that folder where my code is. I think I put it in this YouTube folder. Actually, this is not a GitHub tutorial, so CMD, CMD there. Okay, so let's git init. Let's git init. Okay, it adds everything, all the changes added to the staging area. It's commit first first commit, first bit, whatever. Okay, git remote add origin, then the link to our git ob repo, git push. Now I need to set my SSH. Okay. I use the basic codes. What's going on? Okay, so it's pushing our files to the GitHub repo now. Okay, so if I come back here and I refresh, so we have it here. Great. So I'm going to put this in the description. So if you like this tutorial, please like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. Thank you very much.